And now I'm going to kick us off. So we're going to start with Dwane Chappelle. He is the director of the city's Department of Education and Early Learning. Let's welcome him, please.
Oh, good morning, good morning. Good morning, everybody. How you doing? I was looking back here because they told me I was going to have some theme music, so I love that theme music as I was walking up here. But thank you, Linda, for the introduction. And just wanted to start off by saying, and I'm going to continue, I'm Dwayne Chappelle, the proud director. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I identify as an African-American black male. And before we jump into today, I just really wanted to acknowledge that this land that we're meeting on, and I'm moving around so I can make sure I see everyone. Just want to acknowledge the Duwamish and Squamish tribes of the land that we're on. I also want to acknowledge our elders, those from the past and from the present. So I think it's very important that we do that before we start off today. So now what I'll do is just give us the goal of what brought us here today. For today, our goal is simple. We are here to partner with one another to make sure when our kids graduate from high school that they are not going to survive. We want them to thrive. That is our simple goal today. And the only way we do it is by working together. So in order to achieve this goal, we have to remain focused on our eliminating the race-based opportunity gaps. So that's something I wanted to start off and share with everyone. And also, it's unfortunate that that when we look at some educational disparities that we see where the disparities lie, right? But that's just the reality. And so this data shows that we are continuing to see some academic and economic disparities in our data. Our black and brown youth continue to graduate at lower rates than their counterparts. So just wanted to start off by showing this, and also what we know to be true is that for our young people who don't graduate from high school, they don't earn as much as our young folks who do graduate from high school. So it's very important that not only when we get our kids graduated, that we make sure our kids can be successful and thrive. This piece right here is some other data that I would love to share. And as you see, this is the median income data, or excuse me, as you see, the median income data for our white families is significantly higher than our black and brown brothers and sisters. And for me, when I look at this right here, it's disheartening, but this also lights a fire within me to make sure that this work that we're doing is so important, because at the end of the day, our young people are counting on all of us to make sure that they can take advantage of this growing economy that we have here, specifically in Seattle. And we have to make sure that, and if you can go back one more time, Al, we have to make sure that our young folks are not only, as I said, thriving, we want them to have a living, earning wage in Seattle. And we can do this together as we work together and partner with each other. Okay. So as you're aware, this is our first year. We're diving the Seattle preschool, the Families Education and Preschool Program, our FEP levy. This is going to be our first year of the levy. And we know that we're getting ready to journey into another long stretch. And we want to make sure that everyone understands that our levy is to eliminate race-based opportunity gaps. And that's very important for us. I want us to keep that in mind today as we venture among and network with each other. And as I know Linda gave out Garfield a shot earlier, and I love Garfield, but as the former proud principal of the Rainier Beach High School, I just know that the schools that are here today, there are schools here that you know are potentially will be receiving our FEP levy funds, and we have partners here today that can help schools and support the work that's happening in the schools. We have many amazing teachers that are doing great instruction in the classroom, and we also have many amazing partners that need to support or that can work and support our schools before and after school. So I want us to keep that in mind today. And I also want us to think about as we move through the day today, please just take advantage of this time to connect with one another, to learn about each other, and see how you can partner with someone to help eliminate these race-based gaps that we're seeing. And before I pass this back over to Linda, I also just want to send out just a huge thank you for the work that you've done so far today, so far leading up until today, and just know that we all have to do this together. It's not about just the schools making our kids, ensuring our kids are going to be successful. It's not about the teachers. It's about all of us working together on behalf of our kids. So with that said, I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing this morning? Woo! Yeah. My name, and thank you, Linda, for introducing me. My name is Cristina Gaeta. I identify as she, her, and hers. I identify as Mexicana from Mexico. I'm an immigrant, I'm daughter of immigrants. And so, yes, in solidarity, I also identify as an agricultural farm worker because my family actually worked and picked all the salads you're gonna eat today, all the fruits. And so I actually wanna just represent, I'm a blessed daughter of an immigrant here in front of you today. I'm very happy to actually represent the city of Seattle. I'm with the Department of Education and Early Learning. One of the things I really want to highlight today, just in my positionality with the Color Brave space, the power dynamics that happen in the room, if there's anything I can say, I come from a rural town in Eastern Washington, and it's really weird. In small towns, you know that your kids, and I knew that I was playing with my neighbors' kids, and it was just a different dynamic. And when I look in the room and I see the faces here today, we didn't have as many community organizations and community wealth, people that would come together to help the community. And so I just absolutely love and appreciate Seattle. I've been here for just under 20 years, and I still think it's just beautiful to see everybody in their faces here today. Just the commitment. So with Color Brave Space, my positionality is I honor Seattle, I appreciate it, I'm a daughter of an immigrant, and I thank everybody in here today for being here and showing up. So big round of applause. Let me start with introducing you to our beautiful panel. I'm going to have them go ahead and introduce themselves and share a little bit about where they represent, the organization they represent.
Awesome. Hello. Okay. My name is Colleen Abreu. I'm the Director of Education Partnerships at Seattle University for the Seattle University Youth Initiative through the Center for Community Engagement. My pronouns are she and hers, and I identify as a Black woman. As a mom, a couple weeks ago, it was a 10-month-old and a 10-year-old, but now my son's 1. And I also see a lot of faces that I recognize, so I just want to say hey, and I see a lot of Greeks in here, so I got to bang real quick. Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated with my sorors. Okay. This is another Greek, so I'll pass it off.
Good morning. My name is Damian Hicks. I am a program coordinator with Seattle Parks and Recreation out of the Mercer International Community Learning Center. I identify as he and his, a proud father of 8, advocate for social justice and community involvement. What else is the question? That's about it.
You got it.
Have a wonderful.
That's right. Hi, everyone. I'm Concie Pedroza. I'm the Chief of Student Support Services, so I represent Seattle Public Schools. I'm also a former principal in the district. I'm a proud mom of 2 children in the system, and I'm excited to be here. And I go by pronoun she, her, and I am also Latina, migrant worker family as well, with immigrant roots.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Brown. I'm with Seattle Parks and Recreation as well. I am the Aki Croce Community Learning Center coordinator. I identify as a white male, so my pronouns are he and his. And I am in love with running as much as I possibly can. So I got too much energy to burn, so.
Good morning, y'all. My name is Tina Lapadula. I am the Arts Education Project Manager for the Office of Arts and Culture. I support the work of Arts Education Equity through the work of the Creative Advantage, which is our collective impact initiative for arts education equity for every student in Seattle Public Schools. I identify as a white woman. I identify as a teaching artist, as a proud soccer mom of a public school student, and I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you. I use she and her pronouns.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayan Adem. I work for the Seattle Public Library. I'm the Student Success Program Manager. And so what that means is I coordinate formal learning environments at the library. I'm a proud Seattle Public Schools alumni. I went to Aki myself. I identify as Black. I'm first generation Somali American. My pronouns as she and her.
Thank you, everyone. And so the purpose of this panel is really to introduce school and community partnerships, different approaches. So we have a huge, diverse panel here. They're going to introduce different approaches that are in there, and really the essence of maintaining that authentic connection with community and the community voice. And so what we're really looking at here in terms of what we're all here to do is we're really looking at the different approaches that have happened, talking about any of the challenges and barriers that have happened for us, and the ways in which we can connect and expand further. So what I'm going to do is actually ask you all a question. You can answer the way you feel fit. We don't have to go we don't have to do any of that. Nice. And if anybody in the audience has any questions, please raise your hand and we'll pass the microphone to you. So the first question that I have for you is, if I can find the question. So, what's important in school and community partnerships? Given your experience and the work that you do, the perspective you bring, and the identities you bring. What's important in school and community partnerships?
Please. What's important in school and community partnerships? Go ahead.
So having been a principal with many partners in the past, and I see some of them here, and we have some really great staff here as well that have been doing this for a long time. I think one of the most important part is really coming together in relationship building. And I think I was really excited to see the starting off around racial equity and what does it mean to be anti-racist. And that means you yourself have to do identity work, right? So that means the school has to do that identity work around their racial identity and how that translates into the classroom and the school, the partnership as well, and then you have to figure out how to bring that together. And that takes time and relationships, but it also has to be rooted in what the school is trying to do. You know, so the school has a school improvement plan. They've identified some gaps, which is why they want this partnership, and the partnership has some ideas. I think it's everyone being centered around the whole child, and I think all of that work has to happen simultaneously, and there has to be time together to just sort of unpack some of these really honest questions about what we're trying to do for students.
I would say, so through the Seattle University Youth Initiative, our approach is place-based, and so we're really focused on collective impact and what that looks like when we can all come together, be aligned, and really center around a shared goal and vision. Part of our work is really identifying how can we amplify the voices of those who are not traditionally heard and those who are the furthest from educational justice. So when we think about our work, family engagement is really at the base of that. We're focused on working with families that may not always have a seat at the table, but honoring their culture, their knowledge, and their experience as an asset before anything else. So we don't come in with a prescriptive approach. We come in, again, being wanting to be aligned with folks, everyone at the table, but coming in and trying to be responsive in a way that honors the experience, the culture, the assets that already live within the school and the community that we're trying to support. So especially being a university, a predominantly white university, we do not represent the population that we're working with on many levels. And so one of our baseline things is making sure when we send our SU students into the community, we make sure that they're adequately trained to think about being culturally responsive, not culturally competent, because that doesn't exist, but being culturally responsive in ways that really, again, take into account how they are honoring the diversity of the folks that they're serving, of the students that they're working with, and centering student and family voice in everything that they're doing.
Does anybody want to add what school community partnership looks like in the work that they do?
Sure. I really appreciate it. Again, Mike Brown with Aki Croce, COC with Parks and Rec. I've been in this work about 15 plus years, and I'm thinking back as you're speaking about what are some of the things that make our partnership successful, at least in our mind. And I'm looking at a few of the principals that we've worked with in the past. Shouts out to Dr. Pritchett, Ms. Hunt, some of the other folks. And it's always come down to a lockstep kind of simpatico relationship. As an outside vendor full-time in your buildings, we need proper access to whatever it is, data points, the different resources within the building, if there's different CBOs, shared goals, whether those are levy goals, CSIP goals, et cetera. We need to be invited to those BOT meetings, to those student of concern meetings, which is what's happened in my career, so I want to make sure that I acknowledge that. We can provide specific results when we are given adequate access and resources. So to be specific about what that can look like, at Seattle Parks, we run a multitude of different programs, anywhere from our specifically culturally mentoring programs like our Brothers Keeper, Sisters Keeper, and our HU, which is Hermanas and Hermanos Unidos, which translates to Brothers and Sisters United, to expanded learning opportunities that are lesson-based, tapping into the structure already in the school, identifying which students specifically need those resources, to running fully comprehensive 200-plus 5-week summer school programs. These are the things that we kind of bring to the table, and I just want to highlight the fact that the access and the partnership, the shared goals, the shared of not only the school base, but the levy goals, I think it's really paid dividends in us being able to meet some of those outcomes.
I would add that the phrase that keeps popping into my mind is from Emergent Strategy. Got Adrienne Marie Brown fans out there. Moving at the speed of trust is really important, and trust and community building takes time. And you really have to do that investment in time and energy to build that trust. I also think that, as an arts education person, I see sort of arts as a means and arts as the way and arts as, a strategy in its own right. So to get real mindful about the kinds of creative habits or skills that an arts program is bringing and how it aligns to school initiatives. I feel like arts are the way in almost every case, but there are always ancillary benefits. It's also about getting really mindful about the ones that you want to focus on, whether that's literacy or social and emotional learning or risk-taking or, anti-bullying campaigns. And I've seen really powerful work from all of you when you're able to do that.
I think, our young people are moving around in their neighborhoods and their communities. They're coming to their parks. They're coming to their local libraries. I think it's really important that we wrap our hands around the youth and are working together strategically to really lift our young people, to provide them with the tools and the skills that they need. At the Seattle Public Library, we have 27 libraries. We have children librarians, we have teen librarians. A part of their job description is partnering with their local schools, is showing up, being inside of their classroom. We bring programs to the schools. We curate book lists, that are reflective of the diversity of our youth. And so I think it's really important that we are centering, our communities, especially our marginalized, historically marginalized communities. There is so much strength and power in our communities, and so our communities should be reflective in the schools. And so we should understand what our demographics are of our students, the demographics of our teachers, and really think intentionally about how we are sharing power, how we are creating space for organizations to lead, because it's so important for youth to be able to see themselves, not only see themselves, but to see themselves in positions of power. And so, you know, at the Seattle Public Library, we center race and social justice in all that we do. We're serious about community engagements. You know, we bring author events to the library. We bring the global reading challenge to the schools. We're curating book lists. We're partnering with after-school programs to bring hotspots and Wi-Fi's to grants that are focused on Black and brown youth and access to technology. I think, you know, when you think about schools, you think about communities and just the importance of working together intentionally to lift the voices of our community to support our young people. Yeah.
No pressure, no. I'll go ahead and ask the second question just so we can add some more discussion here. So, and you've all been talking about some of the challenges and things that we're hoping for, and we really need to look at this as, with Color Brave Space, we're looking at learning and what we can do to improve this process and this experience with school and community partnerships. One of the questions that I have for you is, are school and community partnerships uniquely positioned to address issues of racial equity? And Concie, you spoke a little bit about the systems of schools and what historically education has been. So again, are school and community partnerships uniquely positioned to address issues of racial equity?
Once again, Damian Hicks, Seattle Parks and Recreation. I think with partnerships and the opportunity that we bring when we're inside of schools allows us to look at the child from a holistic standpoint, not just from an academic data piece. We are in the community, so we get to know them on a different level. Oftentimes, schools will look to us as experts to know what else is going on in their lives that is affecting their school environment. In addition, it allows us to bridge and develop relationships with the family from a different perspective, where traumatic instances that have occurred generationally in the educational system are lowered. Some of those barriers are dropped, and we're able to build connection with them from the whole family to really understand how we support not only the child, but everything that's going on at home.
I just want to add to what Damian's saying, since we work so close together, that it doesn't fall absent on, I'll speak for myself, on me, that I can tap into a youth development network, and we can find these other organizations or folks that come from our own neighborhoods that mirror our students, that come from have their same stories, to come in, to your point, be in positions of leadership. We're contracting constantly with different individuals to come and lead. I can speak to Brothers Keeper workshops, where all the Black men in the room are leading workshops, facilitating those spaces, so our young men see themselves in those spaces. If we can't do anything, I can only speak for myself about what teacher candidates apply to Seattle Public Schools. But what I can be sure about is making sure that when I contract out or I bring in providers through our youth development networks to work with our students, that we're cognizant about how we staff those positions in those programs. So that's something I just wanted to highlight. We're in perfect position to do that as a resource and a supplement to the school.
And I'll just add that we have to remember, too, that many of our institutions and some of even our CBOs, I mean, everything we design through our institutions is designed through white institutional power structures. We just have to name that, and that's part of our schools, it's part of our system, it's even part of the DNA of our, some of our partners, and we just have to acknowledge that. And I think part of the work is knowing that, and then how do we actively work to undo that? And sometimes the school can be situated to do, we have some really great schools who are doing some amazing work, especially around social justice and anti-racist education. However, we also have to make sure that our partnerships and all of that is in alignment to that. We have to make sure, so I'll give an example. When I was really seeking a partnership that had actually people on the ground that reflected the students that I served. I needed that. And those were really hard conversations I had to have with the executive director to say, what can we do together so that we can bring in the students, that they can have those role models, because they're not getting them in certain spaces in the school system. And to be honest, being a learning partnership, that organization said, you know what, we need to do better. And when we come back to partner with you, we will be better. And I just think that those are the really hard conversations we have to have, because sometimes to undo institutional racism, we have to be really honest and bring both partnerships together and actually really address the inequities on both sides. We are all guilty of it. And you know what? There are many, many things that pull us back. And so how do we start continuing to unpack that? But bringing in communities actually helps with that as well, because they bring in, I have to admit, sometimes my families felt more trusted in those community spaces. So if you have to acknowledge that is where they already have built those relationships, they have language access, they have lots of things. And so we have to figure that how to bring that together holistically. But it's very hard work. It's not easy because you have lots of things pulling at you. And the schools have lots of things that they're responsible for, not just in terms of what the district requires of them, but what the state and the nation requires of them as well. So those are tensions that the community partners have to acknowledge, and we have to work through together.
I would also add that even when your intention is set, and even when the mission and vision is set to be one that is about racial justice, or is one about closing opportunity gaps, you know, what we're finding with the creative advantage is that still, you know, there's persistent injustice and inequality happening because that's how structural racism works, right? And so for anyone who has sort of, you know, neutral policies in place, it's impossible to make any gains because you're still going to get, you know, a churning out of disparity unless you are willing to take the time to come together and think critically about what's working and not working. And still within Seattle Public Schools, race and family income and home language are the core indicators of whether or not you have access to an arts education, for instance. And that's not okay, right? And our initiative is designed to address that, and it's still persistently hard to do. So it's required deeper and deeper conversations about that data and deeper conversations about tactics that are working and not working, and pulling in partners as part of those conversations to ensure that they're doing that work too.
I think in addition, one of the unique qualifiers that allow us to do wonderful work is that we know schools, principals have a lot already that they're trying to balance and manage, and we have all said something about time. When you have specific providers who work as site coordinators in your location, it allows us to be that intermediary to where we can do that additional work for you. We can take on that and look at it from the approach of bringing in additional partners and be that middle person to build those relationships between the school community and other additional community-based organizations. And the fact that we belong in that network already, we have a lot of ties and connections to additional providers to be able to pull off the work that we're trying to get done.
I would just add that when I think about inequity and racial disparities and some of the things that are happening in the schools, as a community partner through Seattle University and working in the schools that we're in, we have the opportunity to be embedded in the schools, and so we have staff members that are housed in the schools and are part of the school fabric. And one of the things that we think about is when we hear the term family engagement, often people think of it in terms of programming. And different activities. And really what we want to be thinking about it is in terms of best practice, right? So what are the ways that we're creating access for families? So if we have all these different resources and we're using these resources as an intervention to fix a problem, what are we doing to actually make sure that families and students have access to those things? Are we making sure that there is language support out of all of our events, that we can provide transportation when we can, that child activities or child care is available, that we can provide food when we can? So thinking about those sorts of things. I think the other piece of it is how are we working collectively to create a school environment where folks want to be? How are we making sure that we are setting high expectations for every single student and every single person in the building, whether it is, you know, a custodian or whether it's a family member or the principal or a teacher, that everyone is operating from the same shared values and core beliefs that, you know, your family is your student's first teacher, your family has assets that they bring to the table, that empirical wisdom is important, and it may not be the same thing as theoretical medical practices, but it is important. So how do we honor all of those things to kind of dismantle these systems and structures that are not, we've been seeing the same issues for the past over 50 years, maybe 100 years, I don't know, but same issues that are happening time and time again. How are we breaking the cycle, providing access, and really inviting folks into the building and sitting at the table?
Powerful. I just want to add on. I think, what you were saying, I think it's so important to really tap into the brilliance and to the assets that our communities already have. There's just so much that our parents, I work with a lot of Somali mothers, and when I talk to them about the school district and how they can be engaged, and they tell me, like, I feel like I'm shifted to the side. I feel powerless. I do not know how to engage. I don't, there's language barriers, and so there are a number of organizations and families that would love to be a part of it. And so what that means is, as institutions, and we have to acknowledge kind of our histories, we have to acknowledge that we weren't necessarily designed and set up for Black and brown students, and even though our intentions are great, that we have to try to really undo some of those policies and those structures to really create an environment where our families can lead. So our families can, lead, coordinate after school programming where they feel comfortable, in this space. And so what that means is, are we open to change? Are we open to shifting culture? Are we comfortable with being uncomfortable? Because I feel like, really, I think that's what it is just being an institution of learning, an institution that's really open to growing. And I feel like that is really where we can tap into the beauty of organizations. And shifting culture, shifting practices is not easy, but I think it's what we need to be supporting our youth and families, especially our Black and brown youth.
And can I just add that what you're naming in terms of shifting culture is also shifting power.
There we
go. And that means we have to let go of some of our power and give that to the folks at the table in order to have these conversations. So that's very important. Exactly. Yeah, thank you.
And I actually really want to appreciate the fact that they're bringing up these opportunities and challenges. So I'm a school representative, and I have the same vision as you all do, okay? Just imagine this, I'm going to role play. I have the same vision. I want to be committed. I'm working at the school, and I appreciate, Damian, that you mentioned, like, busy, lots of students, and you're all talking about it takes a village to educate the child, the whole child. What advice do you have for me as a school representative that really believes and wants to match up and align? What's one thing that I can do better? Because we have the common vision. What's something that's worked really well for you? If you could actually just summarize that really high level. Because we're so much talking about this institutional racism, but the devil's in the details. We can do better on this. And so what's one thing that has worked well?
I think one thing that's worked well for us over at Mercer is our family engagement team and our attempts to reach the family expand outside of the building. I mentioned earlier we have generational curses and traumas that are experienced with the school system. And if the only time we want to meet them is when we're bringing them into our doors, we're not doing us justice. Yes. So we go out into the community. We go into Rainer Vista and Holly Park and things of that sort, and we meet families where they are to learn really what they're looking forward to with the school year, what their stressors are, what their triggers are, and what things are really impacting their ability to walk through the door confidently. And then we come back as a team and we look at how do we address that. We know that as a team, we may not have all the answers, so we're constantly looking to expand that family engagement team and include more and more voices to make sure that we're reaching every child in the school. As an international school, we have several languages in there. I don't represent all of them. I only speak English, so I don't know and understand every other barrier that comes with each student and family. So just being intentional about reaching them and finding out what they truly need is the biggest way that I can give any form of advice.
Thank you. Meeting them where they're at, going outside the buildings. Yep, partners. Anyone else?
Centering relationship, just what he said, is getting out of the buildings. If you go to the library after school, you would be surprised to see how many students are in these spaces in our community. Show up to New Holly, show up to Rainer Vista, break bread with community, hear from our families. Our families want to engage, they want to support, they want to be allies to the principals. They just don't know how to. And so get out of the building, connect and build relationships is what I would put out there.
You're advising me to come to the library?
Yes, yes, come out into the community and connect with families. I think that could make a big difference.
I would say from the school leader's perspective, just from my own experience and watching some of our leaders, is the leaders that have done really a fabulous job have been really clear and really honest and transparent, right, with the partners about, so when we're talking about data, what does the school leader mean when they're talking about data? What does the partnership mean when we're talking about data? The school improvement plan, being really transparent with that plan, because what are the actual goals the school's trying to achieve? But then how do some of these other things can fit in to support that? For example, going out in that family engagement piece is so foundational to many of the goals. And how do we work together to align that? I just think that transparency, having those conversations, because I've learned and I've seen that when partnerships have gone awry, it's been when there's been assumptions made about what we're expecting and what we're not, and then they haven't really had a common conversation about, well, this is what we mean by school improvement plan, this is what we mean by data, this is what we mean by family engagement, and having that common language together so that you can unpack that together. Because to be honest, if somebody is coming from a really different idea about what family engagement is, you have to sort of come together and agree, so what are we talking about here, and what is within the school's power to do, and also learning the structures that are already in the school. So for example, restorative practice, so what's actually happening in the school already to a PBIS, how does that all fit and align together so that there can be alignment, because we don't want kids to be overlooked, and we don't want kids to be underserved. So we have to work together. It has to be all aligned.
I would say in addition to getting out of the building, it's also creating space for families in the building. And so specifically, I want to shout out Principal Hunt at Washington and at Gaeta. We worked with administration to create family rooms in those spaces. The family rooms are really just open for families to come in and just know when they check into the office and they know they can go to the family room and get coffee, or they know that they can sign their student up for activities, or there's some sort of resource in there. At Bailey Gaeta, we actually have families on a rotating schedule teaching classes that they want to teach. So every Wednesday we have a Zumba class that a mom teaches. She volunteers her time to do. Every Tuesday, or at least last week, we had a mug painting class where families wanted to do that. So creating space that's safe for families to come in and see themselves represented in the schools. The other thing I would say is that it is important to honor the context, the trauma, the history, the tension, all of that is already existing before the scholar steps into the building. I know at Washington, we have parents there who went there, right? And now their kids are there, or their grandparents went there. There is history there, right? And so there's healing that needs to happen. And so acknowledging that before coming in and deciding which activities need to happen or changes need to happen, making space for families to share that and being open to listen and be responsive to those things, because those tensions exist and they need to be addressed before authentic change can really occur.
And that's really a good segue to, can I get the Color Brave space coming up? I would love that. So all of you have the Color Brave space tent right in front of you. Is it possible to put it up on the screen? What I want to do is, this last question really has to do with, we're talking about the opportunity gap. And thinking of the Color Brave space and centering that Color Brave space in this room, the Color Brave space has been a life changer for me, having worked at a predominantly minority, diversity-driven institution, department, not an institution. I was working at the Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity, went to work at the City of Seattle, and let's just say the game changes because the history of white institutionalism and white racism that can often happen and is built in can be very prevalent in different environments. And so Color Brave Space has been a game changer for me. Bringing this into the mix, when we were talking about this conversation, the last question really has to do with considering the charge to be color brave today and our shared goals of eliminating race-based opportunity gaps. What's a notice or wonder that you have when it comes to community and school partnerships? So given what you know about the Color Brave space and looking at the opportunity gap, what is one of these wonderings that you really have as to what is built in, what is happening?
in pure candidacy, I would like to see the color brave space because I have no idea what that is and I can't see it behind
I
it.
almost brought it with me. I didn't want to steal it off the table.
Behind us.
It's behind us.
It's behind us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the way I bring this tool into every meeting is, I try to, I honestly, like, I don't always remember, but I start my meetings with it, and it just really levels the playing field with power and race dynamics. So when you think about the opportunity gap, there's one here now.
See the question? Can you repeat the question one more time?
Actually, let me rephrase this, and I know how to change the game real quick on this one. Given what we're struggling with and what we're trying to do with school and community partnerships, what really do you believe is the true essence of school and community partnerships? And what have you seen in the work that you do that is the true essence of why we're here today? I've heard words like trust be built. I've heard words such as embedded be built. You've got a tool in front of you, but it's not about the tools. It's about what you know to be true in the work that you're doing.
The thing that sticks in my mind as I'm looking at this is, you know, I come to this work as a community partner, as a leader of a nonprofit prior to my work at the city, and thinking about like agreement with all of these comments and then how difficult it can feel in the moment to hold ourselves and each other accountable to them. And I think what it really requires is to have relationship enough with all of our partners at the school level to sit in the discomfort of having these hard conversations, but being accountable and doing it anyway. I mean, how many conversations I've had as like a partner, watching how a PTA potentially is making some decisions without an awareness of who this will impact or not. When a school maybe is raising some money, but they're not really including everybody at the table in decision making, it's making sure that there's time to ask those critical questions around who's here, who's not here before we make this conversation. Who will this benefit and who will this leave out? How is this going to perpetuate shapes that have been in this school that have already disenfranchised certain students? How will this, you know, include new populations of students? So that's the hard work, is the uncomfortable work of actually being able to give each other that feedback and hearing it and then using it.
Who's in the room in power dynamics?
I think just for, I was studying them. I love the color brave spaces as well, norms. For me though, it's about keeping the common focus on the common goal. I think when you bring in several institutions and groups and partnerships together, and there's this relationship building and all of this, but at the end of the day, our kids and students that are most needing to be served, being served. That is really the common goal. And how are we going to do that? Because the school can take up some of that, and then the partnerships, you know, how are we doing that service to schools and families? And then how are we really bringing in, and I like that tied in with, and then creating space for multiple truth and norms. Because I think the student voice, family voice, centering that in the work is going to be vital to really impacting, making decisions with that at the center, but also making sure they're part of the decision making as well. Because one of the things we talk about that transparency, families want to be at the table too. And so how do we do that? How do we bring the families into that space? But what our common goal is to make sure our students are succeeding and thriving, not only academically, social, emotionally. So that is our goal. And how do we just keep making sure, because we get logged into the outcomes, the data, the reports. No, how are we centering this up for students?
One thing that I struggle with is sometimes as an institution, we hyper-focus on one group. It's always around black boys. We forget that black boys come from experiences of black mothers. We forget that Latino students are impacted in that as well. And when we hyper-focus, sometimes it does a backfire with the student, because now they feel like all eyes are on me, and my experience says you're looking at me for the wrong reason. So now I've shut down, I've gone into this shell, and I'm not going to perform the way you think this is going to make me perform. So we often, when we talk about in this color brave space, putting the relationship first, is this the actual student we should be focused on? Are these the problems we should be looking at? Are we creating a safe and supportive environment where they're willing to just tell us, dude, back off. Stop watching me, I'm fine. So when we're looking at that, we have to realize that sometimes too much focus does the exact opposite of what we're trying to do.
Damian, you're getting to the true essence of this conversation. And so I got someone over here that's telling me time's up, and I'm going to get the cane over here, but I want to actually, all of our panelists will be here for the remainder of the day for the most part, and you can ask them additional questions, but I really want to thank you all first and foremost for speaking your truths, coming with different perspectives, the work that you're doing and commitment that you're doing in schools. Concie, you're here representing Seattle Public Schools.
Yes, there's a lot of Seattle Public Schools, raise your hand.
And I also want to thank those in the room that are represented here. These are committed partners in the room, so although we have one representative here of Seattle Public Schools, we've got many, so thank you all. Please help me with giving a round of applause to the panelists.